Well, in today's live lesson, we're going to talk about reharmonization. We're basically going to take a very simple song, in this case, Hot Cross Buns, the really popular, children's melody that I think everyone learns in grade school. And we're going to learn how we can add harmony to it. That's pretty typical harmony that you would expect with the song. But then we're going to add harmony that really changes the song in different ways. We're going to learn how we can add some harmony to make it a little more jazzy. We're going to add some harmony and make it sound a little bit more sad, and we'll see where else we can go with it to just talk about how our expectations of what a melody is oftentimes are driven by the harmony, the chords that surround it. And it's really fun to play with those expectations as we learn music. So let's start with Hot Cross Buns, the easiest song you will ever learn in your entire life. It does not get easier than this piece. To play it, it's just the notes E, D, and C. Now, if you're a brand new player, you can totally just play open on the E string, 2 on the C string, or excuse me, open on the E string, 2 on the C string, and open on the C string. Those are going to be the only 3 notes we play. But I like to play these notes up a little bit higher. I think it just sounds a little bit richer. Bring the camera down. Let's go and play the 7th fret on the A string, and then the 5th fret on the A string, and then the 3rd fret on the A string. Those are the only 3 notes that we have to play. They do change the order a little bit, but it goes something like this. 7, 5, 3. Do that again. 7, 5, and then 3. Then we're going to play 3 4 times, then 5 4 times before then playing that first melody again. 7, 5, 3. Super basic, right? So basic that it's almost boring. Well, as we're working on this, there are chords that can be played with this. And the most typical chords played with this very, very simple melody are going to be C and G. And that's all there is. So to play a C chord, just the 3rd fret here on the A string. And then to play a G chord, index on the 2nd fret of the C, ring finger on the 3rd fret of the E, and middle finger here on the 2nd fret of the A. Now, we're going to practice playing these chords and the melody together. We're not going to do both at the same time yet. We will in a moment. So go ahead and pick if you want to play the melody or the chords. I'm going to play the melody, and I'm going to say the chord name that you should play as you play it. And then I'm going to kind of put them together so you can hear it. So go ahead and try it. Get ready with your C and your G and your C chord, or playing the melody, like something like this. We're going to go 7, then that's going to be C, G, C. So that would be playing a C chord, a G chord, and a C chord. Let's try it again. C, G, C. Let's do that again. C, G, C, C, G, C, G, C. So if you played the melody with me, great. Doesn't sound like much, but if you played the chords, you'll notice it starts to add a little bit of harmony. Now I'm going to play a little bit more complex version of these chords, and the reason for this isn't for you to emulate it, but just so that you can hear what it sounds like with the chords and melody together. So again, you can play the melody here on the A string, or you can play the chords, and it should sound something like this now with me playing both together, just for context. So C, G, C, C, G, C, C, G, C, G, C. And you can hear this sounds fine. Bring the camera up. It's a little boring, right? Now I'm doing some cool little chord melody stuff, and we'll get more to that in a little bit. The goal here isn't necessarily to understand how the chord melody is working as much as it's just hearing how the melody and the harmony interact with each other. If you're singing the song, you just are playing a C and a G chord down here, or maybe you're playing it with someone else, they're playing the melody while you're playing the chords. It creates a certain type of sound, and the song is very simple. Now, if you're wanting to know what I did there, played my C as 0037 to get that E melody note with a C chord. And then I played a G chord up here, 0775. Middle finger, ring finger, and index finger on the C, E, and A. This is more advanced. If this is going over your head, that's totally fine. This is just for the players who want to do the steep challenge, and then the C chord down here. And that gives you your melody note of the E, D, and C with our C chord, G chord, and C chord. Kind of neat, right? All right, so now that we have this basis of a simple melody and simple chords, I mean, it really is simple, right? We're playing 3 notes and 2 chords. We create the sound of Hot Cross Buns. That's how it sounds. That's how it is. So good, lesson's over, right? No, the whole point of today is not playing a basic melody. It's learning how we can reharmonize something to change the context of it a little bit. And the first way we're going to do this is we're going to spice it up. These are basic chords, C and G. That's it. Melody, super basic. So let's make it not so basic. Let's add some element of richness. Now, the most common way to add richness to chords is to add what we call extensions to chords. And extensions are just a fancy way of saying add another note to the chord. The most common note that's added to a chord is a 7. And there's a lot of different types of 7s. In this case, we're playing a C major and a G major chord. So we could try, just to start, we could play a C7 chord and a G7 chord instead. And if you do this, you're going to notice all of a sudden this song sounds really bluesy. It sounds something like this. I'm going to play the chords and the melody together. So I'm going to say the chord name. Go ahead and play that as I'm playing this chord, and listen how crazy it sounds. So C7, and then G7, and then C7. And do that again, right? C7, G7, and C7. Hear how bluesy that is? Now, if you don't know how to play C7, G7, no worries. C7 is just the first fret on the A string. That's all. And G7 is going to be the middle finger on the second fret of the C, index on the first fret of the E, and ring on the second fret of the A. So we play this chord, and this chord with this melody. It sounds super bluesy, doesn't it? Let's go and try it again. So we play the C7, and then the G7, and then the C7. Right? Kind of crazy. Do that again. C7, G7, C7. And we play the C7 again, G7, C7, G7, C7. Now I understand I'm playing weird versions of these chords because again, I'm trying to demonstrate the melody and the chords at the same time, which means I gotta kind of adapt the chords in different ways. If you're a more advanced player, you're more than welcome to try the different voicings I'm doing here and follow along. But for the most part, the goal here is just to hear the harmony and melody together. That made it really bluesy, and that's because the blues is built on these 7 chords, which is kind of neat. But what if we want to make it more jazzy? Well, then we got to use different types of 7 chords. And what happens here is in jazz music and harmony in general, we tend to have our 1 chord, in this case our C chord, be a major 7 chord. Now the why there isn't super important today. It's more just important to think, oh, okay, my first chord that I'm playing there, I'm going to try a major 7, see how it sounds. Play a major C major 7, you play 0, 0, 0, 2. It's a nice sound. And then I'm going to keep the G7 the same. Kind of cool. Well, let's try this now. So I'm going to play C major 7, G7, and then C major 7 again. So I want you to play the chord I'm saying, whether it's the C major 7 or this G7, while I play this basic melody. And again, I'm going to play the chords around it so you can get the context, but it should sound like this. So C major 7, G7, C major 7. Do that again. C major 7, G7, C major 7. And the C major 7, G7, C major 7, G7, C major 7. Isn't that crazy? It's a very different sound. And I'm playing the same melody, and as long as you're playing those chords as they go through, it sounds pretty nice. You can sing the melody if you want, or play the melody, play the chords if you want. It's just trying to get comfortable mixing these pieces together. Now, if you're watching this as a recording, there is a tab available for members that includes all of the different things I'm playing so that you can see those cool chord voicings that I'm using throughout this if you're a more advanced player. If you're more of a beginner player and it's just a lot of fun to try to experiment with these chords, don't worry about doing all the crazy chord melody stuff. But I want to add another layer to this. I'm going to make it jazzier with another variation. I'm sick of only playing 2 chords. It's not enough. So what I'm going to do for the first chord, instead of C major 7, I'm going to play C6. Now, does anyone know how to play a C6 chord? Pretty simple. Looks like this. It's all open. How cool is that? 0, 0, 0, 0. And that is a C6 chord. It's also known as an A minor 7. That's not too important. C6 is a nice sort of jazzy way to play a C chord. So now let's try playing our C6 chord, and then our G7, and then our C major 7. And play that with the melody, and let's hear how that sounds. So again, C6, all open, G7, and C major 7, just that second fret there. Should sound something like this. So C6, G7, C major 7. Do that again, C6, G7, C major 7. Now let's do the C6 right here. G7, C6 again, G7, C major 7. Isn't that interesting? Now I'm going to just play it for you. Again, I'm using a little bit more complex voicings up the neck. And the point of that is just to show you how the melody and harmony can sound together. But if you just play these basic voicings, it works wonderfully. Or if you just play the melody. But here's what it sounds like without me blabbing. Something like this. Cool, very different. Bring the camera back up. The importance here is not to understand how, oh, the one chord is going to be a major 7. I can also use a 6. It's to try different things. It's to try chords that you know and that you love and see what happens. First exercise we did there, I just played 7 chords and it was like, oh man, that's super bluesy, isn't it? Cool, isn't it, right? I wasn't even planning on doing those chords when I started this live stream, but I thought, oh, it'll be easier to talk about just that 7 first. And that's just kind of showcasing how this exercise can work. You just try it. And if it sounds good, you're onto something good. And that's really what's important. If you know the chords in their basic form, try some other versions and see what happens. And so far we've reharmonized it now in kind of a bluesy way by using C7 and G7, and then more of a jazzy way by using like C major 7, G7, and like a C6, right? Cool different sounds. But now what I want to do is I want to change our expectation completely of Hot Cross Buns. Even in the jazzy way there, it's still kind of a happy melody, and I want it to be more sad. I want Hot Cross Buns to be, you know, more like soggy cross buns or something like that. It's not what we're looking for. And so to do this, what you can do is you can keep a melody the same. So I'm still going to play my E, D, and C notes. And when you listen to this, because of everything we've done so far, your brain hears C, G, C for the chords and the harmony. It's almost like your brain is putting the puzzle together. But what if I do this? So I'm going to play it and I'll tell you what I'm doing. What if I do this? That was weird. What the heck? What happened there? I played the same melody, still this, right? You can hear those melody notes coming through. But instead of playing C and G, I changed the chords completely. I ended up playing an A minor chord for my first chord. And I did this because of a couple reasons. The first one is that A minor is the relative minor to C major. And that's a lot. If you've never looked at any of this before, that can be very overwhelming. But the thing to kind of keep in mind is that they're kind of sister neighboring keys. C major and A minor have the same notes usually played in them, which makes them very kind of compatible with one another when you're playing around with stuff. The other thing is that the melody is an E note, and that E note is in a C major chord, but it's also in an A minor chord. And because of that, we can play either chord. Now, this version of E is not in this version of C or this version of A minor, which, to play A minor, just the second fret here on the G string added, and that's it, 2, 0, 0, 0. But it's not about what version of the note it is, it's just that the note's in it. Still an E note right here on the open E string. So by playing an A minor, I've now kind of changed the perspective. Instead of a bright and happy C major, it's more a little sad and withdrawn A minor. And then instead of going to a G chord, I go to an E7 chord. Now E7, that's the 5 chord of A minor. There's a lot of music theory. The important thing to note is just when you hear A minor to E7, it wants to go back to A minor really strongly. It's a really cool sound. And so I play my A minor, just the second fret on the G. Then I'm going to play the E7, which is 1 on the G string with the index finger, 2 on the C string with the middle, and 2 on the A string with the ring. 1, 2, 0, 2. Just strum that through with me. Hear how it's really crunchy and everything, and it just wants to go right back to the A minor, doesn't it? You can hear that sort of pull. And so let's try this. I'm going to say the chord as I play the melody. I want you to play the chord. I'm only going to play the melody, okay? So if you're comfortable with A minor and E7, as well as C and G, you're gonna have some fun here because the harmony is gonna change as I play this melody. For now, I'm only going to play the melody notes, so this is really important that you play along to create that context of harmony. Then I'll show you how it sounds putting it all together. Bring the camera down. So let's go and try it. We're gonna start with happy, go lucky, happy, hot cross buns. So C chord, G, C, C, G, C, C, G, C, G, C. Now let's make it a little more spicy. A minor, E7, A minor. A minor, E7, A minor. A minor, E7, A minor, E7, A minor. Kind of cool, right? And you could even add other chords in there. Like when I do this part here, and I come up, I could maybe change the chords around even more. Maybe I throw an F in there, right? 2, 0, 1, 0. Middle finger on the second fret of the G, index on the first fret of the E string. Let's try playing the last melody using an F chord too. So go ahead and play your F here. So it goes F, and then E7, and then A minor, E7, A minor. And so here's me playing it now with these chords. I'll say them out loud again, and I'm gonna do some chord melody versions of it. And all that means is I'm putting my chords up and down the neck to have the melody note still there with a version of the chord that reflects the harmony underneath. You can continue to play these bass shapes that we worked on. It's gonna sound great. Or you could just play the melody with me, just those notes on the A string. Should sound something like this though, going back through all that again. C, G, C. Then maybe C6, G7, C major 7. Then maybe C6, G7, and then C6, G7, C major 7. Now A minor, E7, A minor, A minor, E7, A minor. Let's do an F. Let's do a G7, and now E7, and then an A minor, and then an E7, and then an A minor. So you see, that time I even did one chord and another chord really quickly to create kind of a even more rich sound. And you can intermix this. That's what's so much fun about this. What if I do something like this? C, E7, A minor. And then maybe I do A minor, G7 to C. And then maybe I do the F. And then maybe I do an E7 to a G7. And then do an A minor. And then I do an E7. And then G7. And then a C. That was crazy, right? The goal here is not to understand every single chord and know the inner workings of every note and how they relate to one another. It's just to experiment and try playing different things using chords that you already know and seeing what happens. A little bit of music theory does go a long way here because it allows you to understand how these notes should interact with each other. And for someone like myself who studied theory, I understand that this will work as a result of studying the theory. But at the end of the day, if it works, right? And music theory doesn't need to explain that it works for you to hear that it works. So what I encourage you to do is try experimenting with these versions of the chords that we've just played and try making it your own and trying other chords and other patterns and other pieces too. You can take this concept and apply it to any song you want to play. If your song normally has one chord, try another one to see what fits. You ultimately can just try throwing any chord into anything, and if you like it, that's wonderful. If you want to have a little bit more of a scientific approach or a theoretical approach, that's where music theory can come into play. Doing things like adding chord extensions can help jazz something up. Maybe you add some of those 7 chords to make it a little more bluesy, or you add in some of like the major 7 or 6 chords like what we talked about, turns it a little bit more jazzy. Or maybe you flip the chord in a different way, and instead of playing a major chord, you're playing a minor to create a different expectation for the listener. All of these work really well and create lots, a lot of different opportunities and sounds for you on your ukulele journey as you're working with this. This is one of my favorite ways to write songs is if I'm writing a melody, I will create a theme and I'll be like, oh, great. And then I'll play that theme with different chords, different harmony, just to see how much I can change it and make it sound different. And that's really fun to do. And you can do this in a lot of ways. You know, when I'm playing this, if I just kind of mess around, I'm just going to play random chords now and see what you think. If I go like this. That was weird. I kind of liked it though. What about you? What if I do something like this? That was cool too. What if I do it like oh, that's spicy, right? This is the whole point, is we can kind of try different things. It's very interesting to just mess around and experiment and not be tied to doing one particular thing because you think it's the right thing to do. Ultimately, though, anything that you make that sounds good can be explained through theory. And that's where learning a little bit about what it is you're doing can be really helpful. So again, I encourage you to just try this. See how it goes. Try to make up your own sounds using different chords. Use these ideas that we did in this live stream and leave a comment down below with what you're doing to create your own sounds, because it's pretty cool to reharmonize stuff. I'm going to open this to questions now and see. It looks like I had a couple of comments saying hi from Utah from Harold. Hello, Harold. Thank you so much for coming. And Ron Ball says, I can hear and see you fine. Excellent. I'm very glad that message says that at this point of the lesson and I'm not reading. I can't hear or see you. That's a relief. I did have a question on the Rock Class 101 forum. So every second Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. Pacific time, we do these live streams. And if you can't make them live, you can always leave your comment on the forums. I'll be able to answer it here live. And so the Bumblebard left a question here saying, oh man, I am so, with about 30 O's, excited for this one. I can't wait to learn more about this concept. Without fully knowing what's involved with this idea, my question is, how far can you modify a given tune before it's no longer that tune anymore? That's more an existential question, perhaps. Maybe as long as the main melody is tacked and recognizable, no matter how much you change the harmony, it's still the song you started with. I'll be pondering this way too much now. Thank you for coming up with these great lessons and topics. Wonderful question. Really great one. And the thing about it that's kind of funny is it is existential. It's totally up to you. If I give an example here, I just played Hot Cross Buns in major and minor, but I kept the melody the same, which is something that you mentioned. So what if I did this? Bring the camera down. What if I play this? Was that Hot Cross Buns? Well, my melody now is this. That's an E flat, D and C. Instead of an E, D, C, I'm playing E flat, D and C. So what I've done here is I've actually literally turned the melody minor. So before I just changed the harmony minor, right? I went from a C major chord to an A minor chord, but I kept the same melody notes intact the way they were. And this time I actually fundamentally changed the melody to be minor. Is it still Hot Cross Buns? I don't know. I could see that. I could make the argument, right? And maybe I can kind of go back and forth between. So, you know, here's my improv Hot Cross Buns jam. So I go... That was weird. I was going back and forth between them and just trying different things with those chords and created kind of its own sound in its own right? And I don't know, was that Hot Cross Buns? I guess I would say so, because it still keeps that initial intention, but it's very different now. So I could see both ways. So it really is up to the player, I think, and the listener to decide if it's still the song. Andy says, really fascinating. I can see you trying. I can see trying this in songs I'm working on. Would you summarize the changes you used? 1 sevenths, 2 replace major with relative minor, 3 replace the 5 chord with the 5 of the 5. If there's time, would you show the voicings used up the neck for C7, G7? Absolutely. So to summarize the changes we used, I'd even add a little bit more. So we learned just the melody, right? And then we learned just the harmony. So we learned just the melody and the core chords that are used. So that's not variation yet, right? That's just kind of what we have. The first thing I did is I added chord extensions because that's adding an extra note to the chord. And I just added the 7th chord to them. So I didn't think about music theory or anything. I just was like, oh, well, what if I do a C7 and a G7 chord? And by doing that, you end up with something really bluesy because C7 and G7, that relationship is very, very bluesy. The 1 chord is a dominant 7 and the 5 chord is a dominant 7. Very blues sound. If I lost you with that comment, it doesn't matter. All that you need to think about is it's bluesy, right? But then I wanted to make it more jazzy. And to do that, I added extensions that are what we call diatonic. And what that means is I kept to the notes of the scale I'm playing in. So instead of playing C7, which has a B flat note, which is not in the key of C, I played a C major 7 chord, which has a B natural note and is in the key of C major. Again, there's a lot of theory here. This is really more for the advanced players looking for the nitty gritty. And by playing that C major 7 and the G7, it sounds really jazzy. And I add a C6 in there too, just for another variation, which adds an A note to the C chord, and it just sounds nice. It's just a cool sound. And so that made it more jazzy as a result of it. So change 1 was just throw a 7 on there, see what happens. Change 2 was throw a 7 that reflects the key we're in to make sure that we're not playing any notes that are out of key. The third variation that I used here was playing with the relative minor, just as you said. And as I did this with the relative minor, I not only played an A minor chord, but I played the 5 chord of the relative minor. In that case, that gives me an E7 chord. E7 is not normally in the key of C, but it's a very strong chord when you're playing A minor to create what we call a harmonic minor sound, which that's just a fancy word of saying more minor. It sounds really kind of, like off kilter a little bit, like it's a nice source of tension. And so I use that E7 chord with the melody note because the D note of the melody happened to be a chord tone in E7, so it worked out. And that's what I was looking for, is playing versions of the chords that had those notes contained within them, right? So it's actually, yeah, as you just said, Andy said, I got it, the 5 of the relative minor. Exactly right. E7 is the 5 of the relative minor, the 5 of 6. And that was another way to play it. But then I also went on a little tangent of playing it as, instead of being in C major, I played it in C minor, which now is playing what we call the parallel minor. Oh, God, there's so much music theory, but all that it's saying is, oh, instead of playing it major, I played it minor and played a C minor chord and a G major chord instead and created a totally different feel. And it's not limited to just that. You can do so many other things as you play it, but these ways that I just showed you here today are pretty consistent ways to create different harmony and different sounds with what you're playing. The Bubble Bard says, that was so stinking cool. I love the minor melody of Hot Cross Buns. Sounds kind of Beethoven-y. All really neat. Thank you. Absolutely. And, there's a lot of representation in classical music of like themes and variations where it will play something in major versus minor. Kind of fun to do. One of my favorite instances of this is from Star Wars. Shocker, if you've ever seen one of these. I've probably mentioned Star Wars before. But there's an animated Star Wars TV show called Star Wars Rebels. It's fantastic. I promise there's a point to this. And in it, it takes place during the Empire, Emperor Palpatine and all that stuff. And the heroes are at what's called Empire Day celebration, where it's, it's like an Empire celebration. And they do an in-universe version of Imperial March in major. And so the parade's happening and they're playing Imperial March as a major song. It's wild to hear, just because we normally think of Imperial March as that sort of, something like that, right? And so now what if I do a major version? Let's see if I think about that. It might be something like... so it goes to the... So it'd be something like... something like that. I was not expecting to play this today. Isn't that crazy to listen to? It sounds nothing like it and yet totally like it at the same time. And so they did that in the show as an exercise of this reharmonization to, show like, oh, the Empire's not so bad, right? It's major and happy. And it works really well in the show because anyone who's heard the song before is like, I know that, but that's not right. Why does it sound happy? It shouldn't sound happy. It's a fun little exercise of this technique. So super fun concept. One of my favorite things to work on in private lessons. Shout out to Skip because we just worked on this in a lesson recently. And when Drew was asking about different live lesson ideas, it popped right up because it's such a fun little exercise. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. If you're watching this as a recording, we do these again every second Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. Pacific time. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. If you're unable to make it live, you can always leave your comments and I'll be sure to read them on the live lesson from the forum post. So thank you so much. Take it easy. I hope you all have a wonderful week and I'll talk to you soon.